Tubes, needles, prayers, and loving hands keep this baby alive.
Originally they gave him a 10% chance of survival. Now they're saying it's 50-50.
One parent is always at his side, while the other cares for his 14-month-old twin. The babies were 6 months old when Michelle and Scott McCoy noticed a tilt in Ian's neck. Weeks later, he started throwing up.
And that's when they discovered that he had a malignant brain tumor.
Their lives were suddenly spinning in a whirlwind of hospitals and specialists and fear. Given only a 10% chance, Ian survived the 8-hour brain surgery to remove the tumor and a bone marrow transplant in San Francisco to replace the marrow destroyed by massive doses of chemotherapy.
Just kind of praying and keeping your fingers crossed that he would recover quickly before any infection set in. Is it, brother?
It was then that doctors decided to test Ian's twin, Liam, as a precautionary measure.
Looking for something, they discovered something else.
A condition called Arnold-Chiari malformation that as he grows could cause seizures and difficulty swallowing and speaking. That would mean future brain surgery for their second son.
When I got the word, I was in the hospital and we were in isolation. I was in isolation with Ian and I felt my knees buckle and I was feeling very ill at the time.
But after a double dose of bad news came a double dose of good. A specialist believes Liam's is a mild form of Chiari that needs to be closely watched. And Ian recovered enough to come home.
I just want him to do well. And I love him so much. I just love him so much.
But just days ago, little Ian McCoy came back to the hospital with a life-threatening infection from his catheter.
We've had a number of setbacks, but we've been lucky in our unluckiness. And we've been, blessed.
Blessed because Ian has so far beaten all the odds.
This little guy is incredible. He's my hero.
Friday at 11 a.m., the sirens and the radio broadcast were screaming the alert to take cover. The Hui quickly looked like a ghost town. Folks all around the shoreline were evacuated to shelters. Kaloa School was packed with surprised refugees from the hotels in Poipu.
The phone rings, so I said, thanks a lot for the wake-up call. And she says, I got news for you. We're leaving the hotel. Like, get in your car and go to the Kaloa School. So that was my wake-up call. I thought it was them waking me up,
Around noon, these folks were playing cards, following the weather reports on radio and television, hungry for news about the storm. Meanwhile, guests at the Hyatt huddled in the ballroom, trying to make the best of a blown-away vacation. But the tension rose with the wind as canvas crashed against the ceiling glass and lights flickered in the makeshift hospital next door. A convention of doctors prepared for the worst. Just outside, the ocean was boiling over the seawall. Rocks spilled onto the highways and roads became rivers of floating debris.
The eye of the storm is still about 2 hours away. We just now made our way to shelter. On the road, we had to swerve to avoid downed power lines. We saw sheet metal and roofs fly by the car and trees cracking, forming roadblocks on the highway.
Waiting out the storm in the City Hall building where Civil Defense is housed in Lihue, we watched Aniki's fury for hours. Inside, as the eye approached, our ears popped from the pressure. A window crashed open. Employees barricaded the door to keep more debris from flying into the building.
No damage, but the emergency room is up and running. We cannot utilize our laboratory due to damage to the building. Over.
Communication systems went down late in the storm, leaving Civil Defense with nothing but a high-tech walkie-talkie and a lot of worry about the residents of Kauai. The show starts even before the Angels are airborne.
Flying Blue Angel number 3, Lieutenant Commander Doug Thompson.
But when they take to the sky, it's a sight you just have to see to believe. The Blues were born out of World War II. Admiral Nimitz wanted the nation to remember that naval aviators played a big part in the victory. So today's show was a fitting tribute to the old warriors.
Blue Angel, timing.
Folks always watch in awe, eyes straining, ears closed. It's a spectacular sight to see the Navy's FA-18 soar past one another, screaming against the sky. It's like a graceful dance through the air, swooping and spinning just above the horizon with tight turns in tandem. Here, mistakes are counted in inches. They fly so close that without the canopy, one angel could practically reach out and touch the wing of another. But But I did touch an angel when I flew back seat last week.
This one's for you, Dad.
It was my long-awaited chance to meet my father's first love. He was a career pilot in the Navy and lived to tell about the day his old Corsair was shot down in the Marianas Islands during World War II. If family lore is to be believed, he was once invited to join the Blue Angels. I lost my father when I was about knee-high, but to me, Dad was always larger than life.
Now I know why my father loved us so much.
From the time I was a toddler, I've watched the Blue Angels and dreamed of Dad. On this day, our spirits soared together. We went to sea with some pretty tall expectations. Scientists wanted to see just how well they could talk to an underwater gadget that sits at the bottom of the ocean floor. They've spent years testing this tsunami sensor to measure the height of dangerous waves. Now they need to test the communications equipment that brings the tsunami information from the water below to the scientist above. Bright yellow buoys would bring the high-tech equipment back to the top when the test was over. Then, like an iron sculpture sacrificed to the sea, the tsunami sensor disappeared into the depths, 2.5 miles below.
We're at 600 meters depth and we're on course for a good landing.
With the ocean crashing over the sides and the ship pitching and rolling in 8-foot seas, the rest of the test came to an abrupt halt. Scientists could only listen to the sensor from the ship.
Transmit every 15 seconds.
By nightfall, project scientists and engineers were forced to make a critical decision. Their goal of saving thousands of lives from a killer wave is staked on a gamble with the weather and the possibility of losing their equipment. Battling darkness, rough seas, and cold ocean spray, the buoy, with its communication system, is water-bound. But dawn brings disappointment.
Half a message and then it started going bad.
The buoy, dropped 5 minutes too late, missed its mark.
So here's the anchor of the surface buoy, but because of the prevailing winds and currents, our buoy showed up here.
It was out of communication range, but that's what they needed to know, how far the buoy above and sensor below could drift apart and still communicate. Eventually, they lassoed the buoy and used the ship to drag it back into place.
Just got to hit. You did? Just like that.
For 2 hours, the scientists gathered essential data. It would take them 5 hours of hard work to bring their equipment back to the ship.
Now they say they have all the information they need and it's full speed ahead with the new and improved tsunami warning system.
This quiet valley became a war zone today. M16s and machine guns fired live rounds at enemy targets at the top of the hill. Their role? To keep the enemy busy while the assault team charged around the side to take the hill from behind. On this day, it's not the enemy fire these soldiers are worried about. It's their buddies on the other side.
You get the live rounds going, you got another position firing, and we're moving across at the same time. You got to make sure you guys ain't crisscrossing in front of each other.
Go, bound up, keep it right, let's go.
As these soldiers charge up the hot and dusty hill in rocky terrain, they learn more than weaponry. They learn war techniques and teamwork under fire.
You're looking out to your left and your right to make sure that everybody's safe.
Dangerous as it is, this is what civilians call war games. And because we were here, they let us play too.
They say this is a Claymore mine. Take off the safety with this. Yell Claymore.
Claymore, Claymore, Claymore!
And hit the button.
Boom.
Boom.
Learning to wire and set those mines is part of the exercise. Training that could one day mean the difference between life and death. They're the pride of the Air Force. The best of the best. The Thunderbirds perform their aerial dance in the tiniest, most maneuverable fighter jet of all, the F-16 Fighting Falcons. And today, I was a backseat dance partner.
Pulling about 4.5 G's going up. And then we'll roll when we get there. How's that? Just like this.
My flight started with 2 hours of preparation, a flight suit fitting, special gear from toe to head. Call it the Darth Vader look. Then I climbed the ladder to a tiny little cockpit.
We'll see you after the flight. Good luck. Hey. You're welcome.
Yes!
and Major Randy Lane taxied for takeoff.
Ready to really go flying?
I'm ready.
Here we go. Straight up.
United 191 Heavy, descend and maintain 1,005. Speed
Like a
is
carnival ride, only you get to
210.
control the stick.
Yeah.
At some 600 miles per hour, the world below disappears in seconds. Major Lane took me through loops and rolls. We flew upside down, with the dark blue ocean and light blue sky all blending together.
Okay, now push it left.
Is it left?
You're doing great. Keep pushing. All right. You're rolling an F-16.
Yep, this brave soul let me take the controls, a real testament to his courage. We went from 0 gravity force, like the weightlessness of space, to more than 9 times the force of gravity.
Hey, here we go, Barbara.
Which feels like your body's being crushed by an elephant while a boa constrictor squeezes the life out of you.
Believe me, now you got 9.4.
The 45-minute flight thundered by in what seemed like seconds after flying at lightning speed with a Thunderbird.
She did great. We did everything we do in the air show.
Barbara Wallace, NBC, Hawaii News 8.